Hello, everybody, and welcome to your golden ticket to success, freedom, and happiness. And today it is my honour to welcome what I know to be the grandmother and grandfather of the coaching and self-development world, Tony and Nikki V. Welcome, Tony and Nikki.
Hey, hello.
Back there.
Tony and Nikki V are best known as the relationship couple and for their work on love and intimacy. But recently they have merged their 30 plus years of personal and spiritual development to create the secret to life, which is a philosophy which assists people to live an expanded life and a higher state of consciousness and unconditional love in their life. Wow, I cannot wait to hear from you guys. But could you start off by just giving us, and I know your story, so I'd love you to share it also with our audience today. What did you draw on perhaps from your past? Any specific incidents or series of events that you guys feel has molded and shaped who you are today as a professional couple and perhaps individually on a personal level as well?
Yeah, I mean, our personal stories are really quite amazing because for both of us there was sort of like a catalytic moment, I always use that word, which is sort of like a mini awakening really, and some people have huge awakenings and some people have a series of lots of mini ones, but I think for both of us we had sort of quite a reasonable sized catalytic moment, which then became quite life-changing in as much that we sort of recognised that our old life wasn't quite bringing the joy and happiness that we expected it to. Being told, you know, from a young age, obviously we're baby boomers, so, you know, a generation on from yourself, of course, but, you know, we were always sort of told that success was always about, you know, money and the material world and stuff like that. And, you know, both of us have been and had those things, you know, houses, cars, you know, everything that you could imagine, but still sort of didn't quite find the happiness that was the sort of promised land of that material success. And it was both of us really separately. I mean, Nikki will speak for herself, of course, but I went to a personal development event and just had a moment of realization that said, there's got to be more than this. And it set me off on a bit of a journey. And so I'm sure that's true for many, many people. But I was bold enough because I noticed in personal development in particular that people, they hear it, but they're not often prepared to take the action. And of course, you know, one of the spiritual laws which I love is the law of action. Because, you know, just to intellectualize it is almost to waste that knowledge. And the wisdom comes from putting that knowledge into action, to experience it, not just to intellectualize it. So, you know, certainly I was prepared to go, all right, here's my life, let me throw that in the bin and let me start again. And that's what I did, and it was, you know, been a journey since then, which has been really quite remarkable and led me to meet Nikki and obviously then to share what we do today.
Yes. Well, our stories are quite interestingly similar actually, because I don't know whether you're aware that we've been together as a couple, you know, in an intimate relationship for only 11 years now. And one of the reasons why we, when we first got together, people asked us to talk about our relationship, which was absolutely a lovely thing. But the reason why we felt we had the right to talk about intimate relationships was that both of us had had a, you know, pretty catastrophic history in our first marriages. I was married twice before, and Tony was in, you know, 2 or 3 intimate relationships. And they had been really, really painful, which kind of brings me, I suppose, to my, you know, my catalytic or epiphany moment, which was that, you know, I'd got a lot of success in life in terms of money, and, you know, I had a high-flying job, and, you know, had a lovely house and lovely clothes and holidays and all that sort of thing. But I recognized that because of my energy, and again, that's what personal development and spiritual development helped me to realize, the same as Tony, is that because of my energy, I was basically getting success, but it wasn't bringing me the happiness I really wanted. So I don't put it quite as literally as throw it in the bin, but I definitely came out of my corporate role, decided to you know, commit the rest of my life to assisting others as a coach, and also, you know, sort of almost like sold up and gave myself the freedom to travel the world and to literally, you know, assist others as a coach. So, and really, a lot of people sort of think that the story kind of ends there, but of course, I absolutely believe that when we want to expand and have a different experience of life, both in terms of our health, wealth, you know, relationships, all those kind of parts of our lives, that what we do is we need to keep learning and keep expanding and keep really learning more about ourselves and how we can, well, not only just have a better experience for ourselves, but have a better experience with a partner and with friends and family, and then I suppose, you know, they say, you know, for the greater good. So one of the first things that really attracted me to being with Tony was because he has this incredible vision of how, you know, his legacy for mankind, and how his vision is really to assist people. I mean, he's just saying to you earlier, we've been to a little restaurant in Birmingham which we love for lunch, and of course, you know, we're sitting there and the first thing we say is, well, you know, what can we do now to take our vision and, you know, expand, you know, and help more people in more ways than we are doing now. So we've kind of committed the rest of our life. I was thinking I was going to retire at this kind of age and, you know, just hang out and have lunch and all those things. I find myself in some ways working harder than I ever have, because we have lots and lots of clients, you know, all over the world who we assist either, you know, on a kind of VIP basis, which is like face-to-face and coaching and all that, or people that we just, you know, we do a weekly video blog, as they call it nowadays, and, you know, we get lovely emails and letters from people all over the world just basically saying, you know, you said something on a video that really helped me, and that really makes my heart sing when that happens. So yeah, we have a lovely life, and those epiphany moments that seemed kind of quite radical at the time, you know, when we look back, I suppose, are just decisions that we made that really changed everything for us, and have brought us that happiness, which, quite frankly, money and success didn't.
You said something, Nikki, and I'm going to just touch on that. You said you were glad you did make that decision, all those changes, and I just want to second that, because I'm glad you did, because I've seen the work that you guys do, and the world needs more Nikki and Tony V's. So I'm glad that you guys are doing what you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
Lovely sort of flow of story there, and a testament really to people out there who might feel like perhaps you know, they've perhaps come too far in life to make any changes, or perhaps you know, it's too difficult, you know, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, all of that. So, you know, I love that you guys are an example of it. You know, you've got a wonderful, fulfilling, intimate relationship, and you guys are just sharing that with the world and teaching other people how to really live a life of happiness and freedom.
Yeah, well, of course, the interesting thing is that when you look back, you go, oh yeah, you know, but at the time, of course, you know, it's hard to let go of things, and letting go is one of the biggest things that, you know, we teach, isn't it?
Absolutely.
About, you know, so we teach all sorts of philosophy about, you know, how to expand and have a better life and all those sorts of things, but actually sometimes the hardest thing to do is to let go of what you've already got.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think that's definitely true in relationships, but also, you know, it can be true in all walks of life and all parts of life. And yes, I suppose that we have people at all ages who say to us how hard it is for them to shift and change once they've invested a lot of time and money and energy into doing something. And often it's obvious to us as coaches that the best thing that they could do for themselves is really just to let it go and move on to the next thing.
Yeah, I definitely think we weave a web in life that is quite difficult to unweave. And that is particularly true of relationships. You know, many people, you know, argue that a longevity of a relationship is a sign that it's sort of a good thing. You know, they just go, oh, how many years you've been married? Well, 25 years. Well, that's fantastic. But actually, you know, most of those people aren't necessarily happy They've actually just weaved a web that they're frightened of escaping from. Now, that's not encouraging everybody to leave each other. It's encouraging them to go, okay, so look, if we're not really happy together, what do we need to do to find that connection and that magic and the spark and sparkle that we had in the early days of our relationship? So this is very true of many couples that come to us. All that's happened is their relationship is like drifted. And they're like two people sharing a house now, and they're frightened to do something about it. And in fact, this week we were making a video blog for couples, saying that the government are very aware of the fact that 45% of relationships are falling apart in today's world, but people are massively fearful of seeing if they could find a solution, and they seem to rather let the relationship fall apart, blame the other person and move on and try and find someone else, instead of doing the more spiritual personal development thing, which is to go, so what am I doing here that's giving me this experience of this person that's not working for me and quite likely is not working for them. So that's the magic that we attempt to bring, is to help people look at themselves in a new, more empowering way that gets them a new experience, rather than, you know, externalizing, because at the end of the day, it's what's going on inside you is much more important than, you know, what's going on outside, and what's going on outside is generally a reflection of what's going on inside. So it's, you know, good spiritual and personal development stuff, but it's basic stuff. But many people, even when they get on this path, don't sort of really follow through. They sort of go to the next event or read the next thing or watch the next video and go, yeah, I agree with that, but they're not still living it. This was really true when we lived in Glastonbury, because we lived in Glastonbury for 2 years and set up a project there. And many people came and they absolutely loved it and they said, oh, it's fantastic. But very few were really prepared to let go and join in something new for humanity. And you see that today in the peace movements, for example, you know, where you look at the situation, say, in the Middle East, where, you know, people are crying out for peace, but there's not enough people gathered together to change the situation, because the consciousness, the average consciousness, is so low that still they end up, you know, doing terrible things en masse to each other, instead of rising above that and joining together and going, look, we don't really need this. So it's like it needs this massive shift in consciousness, which does, as Nikki say, take a lot of individual letting go for it to happen en masse.
I'm totally hearing what you're saying, and I speak from experience, putting my hand up. You need to walk through the fire if you want to make a change, and
yes.
It's not comfortable, and I've walked through many fires. Both hands up.
But there's a joy the other side, isn't there? Because you've had the experience, you know, whereas when you're fearful of the fire, then you just stand back and say, well, you know, I agree with what you're saying, but I'm not prepared to take any action. So it's all about the people that are prepared to take action. And of course, you know, it is totally experiential. So it's only once you walk through the fire that you really get it. Yeah. And then you go, okay, this is like magic the other side. But, you know, hey, it is an individual choice. And that's why I believe our work and your work is so important. It's to encourage people to face the fire and go, okay, so look, these people can help us. They can help us. I know there's something else. I'm not sure what it is, but help me experience it.
Yeah, sure. You talk a lot about personal and spiritual development, and do you think you'd be able to perhaps talk about and highlight the differences, and then perhaps comment on whether they go hand in hand? So if you're on a personal development journey, is it a given that you're going to develop spiritually as well, vice versa, or not, in your point of view?
That's a great question. We actually sort of call ourselves the bridge between the two, because we've not really met that many people that have done both at the level that we've you know, participated personally and obviously then sharing it. So we always say, look, the personal development people could do with a bit of spiritual development, and definitely when you get in the spiritual camp, then the spiritual people could definitely benefit from a bit of personal development. So there is a complete difference in my view, and I think personal development has sort of come from the States. You know, that was its home, you know, people like Jim Rohn, and then in the next generation, of course, you have people like Tracy and Robbins and, you know, these sorts of guys. And these guys, of course, pitched their thing under the label of success. You know, they call themselves success coaches. So what does success mean? Well, look, for me, success means different things at different levels of your expansion, just like the word love does. So, you know, if you're a more expanded person, or you have a more expanded consciousness, and that's not superior to somebody that hasn't. It's just, you know, we have different levels of conscious. We are where we are. But somebody with a more aware or more conscious sees things like success and love completely differently to somebody with a less long just to get more wealth. Now that doesn't necessarily expand your consciousness. It could expand your desire for just more material, and certainly I see quite a lot of that going on. And then, you know, you're just on the old train really. But of course, it's bringing new. Well, it challenges your old belief system, which is really great, and it challenges you to look at the world through new eyes. Through a new perception. So that's why I'm a personal development fan. I think for many people, this is their starting point. Now, what goes on in the spiritual world is, of course, some people see their element. It depends what their entry point is. Some people might join through, you know, Reiki, for example. You know, they get on a Reiki course, or they may go on a crystal course, or they go on an angel course, or they might get involved in crop circles or whatever it is. You know, when you live in Glastonbury, there's everything from one side, you know, you might be witches and fairies and elves, and then, you know, the other end of the scale, you've got, you know, people, you know, mad about crop circles. And, you know, what's so fascinating about Glastonbury is that they don't necessarily agree with each other, and what they tend to do is think, this may be a mass generalization, but they tend to, or it's my experience being there, is that they tend to think that their piece of the jigsaw, whether it be Reiki or angels, is it. Whereas I believe it's a jigsaw puzzle with many pieces.
So not unlike the world of religion then, sorry to interrupt, but not unlike the world of religion where a lot of people think that their religion is the, it's the right way.
Is it? And then they get stuck on that, and then they close down to the perception of other things. So my thing is, it's great to have an entry point. You know, if you start with Reiki, this is fantastic, but to grow on that and to learn more about yourself through Reiki rather than think that Reiki is the answer, because otherwise you get sort of stuck in that piece of the jigsaw puzzle, and it holds your further growth and expansion down. So I see spiritual development like a big jigsaw puzzle, and imagine it was a 100-piece jigsaw puzzle, and just as you go to put the 100th piece in, it suddenly expands to a 1,000-piece jigsaw. So it's like a never-ending puzzle, which is fabulous, and it's such a journey to be on. But I encourage people on the spiritual path to just look at all of it. If you've got to read it all, study it all, doesn't matter if it's David Icke, who's in one position, or you might go on the other side. One of my great learnings was about multidimensionality. This is a fantastic subject. And once you sort of learn about your multidimensional self and can perceive yourself through different dimensions, my God, you see what other people really don't see, but you find that piece inside of yourself. Whereas when you just have one piece of the jigsaw, you tend to still find that your experience, albeit you've done some spiritual development, still can be a bit stuck. You can be stuck. Whereas the whole purpose of the whole thing is to be unstuck.
So would you say, since part of our topic today is freedom, that if you're not careful and aware of what's going on in your life, whether you're on a personal development journey or on a spiritual journey, it's quite easy to, I guess, forfeit your freedom, especially if you rely on certain means, perhaps tarot cards or, a certain text or a certain particular thing that you've bought into that's worked for you, but haven't perhaps stepped out and explored something else. Would you say that's almost inhibiting one's freedom?
I think if you make that it, so if you're a tarot card reader, that's fantastic, or you're into just receiving tarot card readings, I'm going, look, let's not make anybody wrong, because that would be not a good thing to do. That's like a dualistic view, and really the more expanded person doesn't do right or wrong. They see everything as perfect. So I go, look, it's perfect in this moment for you, but be open to expanding yourself through discovering other elements. So, for example, we went to, there's a beautiful spiritual place to go in northern Italy near Turin, which is a community of about 1,000 people who live there, and it was the idea of one guy who now last year passed, but the community absolutely thrives, and there's a lovely lady there, and she teaches a particular type of card, and so I sent Nikki on to spend a day with this absolutely expanded and amazing woman, and Nikki can do these cards, and so sometimes, look, she's probably got them in her handbag now. But what's brilliant is we could be doing something with a couple, and suddenly, intuitively, up comes, well, let's get the cards out, and so we're using all sorts of different tools by, not necessarily mastering them, but by being aware of them. Because, look, the more expanded soul is just aware of much more rather than isolated to one set of beliefs. So, I think Nikki, you might share more about the cards or how you.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you were saying about multidimensionality, because when I was thinking about how I would answer your question about spiritual development, personal development, I was thinking that what's if I remember when, because I started off in the personal development, I came from a corporate background and I was an HR director for a large company, so I came across, if you like, training and development, and therefore I found personal development. Mm-hmm. And one, of course, the first things that is amazing about that is it really asks people to really look at the way they think, what their language is like, what their beliefs are, as Tony said. So, of course, personal development has that fantastic part of really getting people to tell themselves the truth about, who's responsible here for what, we have experiences we have in our lives. But, of course, often, if you talk to people in the personal development world, they will talk about things which are a bit more out there, and they'll say for example, what's your vision, what's your purpose on the planet, and I have some colleagues who I respect very highly who use quite practical steps to work out why people might, do what they do for a living or, for a business, which will, there's a great book called What Colour's Your Parachute? And it's all about choosing what your life's work is for, but it's very much kind of a head decision. And what worked for me was I was definitely in the kind of personal development mode, and it was all about making decisions that were, yes, good for me, but also for the greater good, and I started to think about what my purpose in life was. But it was only when I came across a more spiritual way of looking at things that I recognized that there was a bigger part of me, that there was this, what people might call the higher power, or the intuition, or, as Tony now teaches brilliantly, the multi-dimensionals, the dimensions that we have access to all at one time. He always uses the analogy of the television signals. We've got like BBC One, ITV, BBC Two, all the Channel 5. Are they all going on at the same time? Well, yes, of course. And of course, what I see in personal development, because I'm obviously involved in that quite a lot, 'cause I actually teach other coaches as well, is that I see that they've got all their other switches switched off, and that they're actually just and they're kind of in their head still, even though they've got a lot of success through having, a new way of thinking or new beliefs. So I think that what's important is that when we are aware of other parts of ourselves and other parts of the universe which are absolutely supportive of us in any way, then we can utilize things like, we have a great friend who looks at astrological charts in absolute detail, and then as the cards that Tony talked about are basically, one needs to go into kind of like a meditative state in order to really have the cards give the person the message that's important to them. So I suppose really what Tony's saying, which I agree with, is that we've loved the journey of learning about all sorts of different ways that the universe, if you like, can support us, and how by explaining it to other people. I mean, I could sit with somebody who's with me because they want to grow their coaching business, you know. And it's so fascinating is when we're on a journey that I could be with somebody who's very much in their head and very much deciding how to get success still, and so that no judgment of that. And I might ask them a question about, why did you come here this time round? And they kind of go, I go, well, if it's true, if it were to be true that we have more lives than one, what's your purpose? Well, what are you here to learn? And all of a sudden, people go away from the whole, how do I get money, a house, a car, and, a business to make money so that when I retire, I've got plenty. They go away from that thought and they go into a more expanded, to use that word, view of why they're here. And then, of course, you can actually, even at that stage, introduce them to the concept that we're all connected and that we're all joined as one in this universe and that we are part of the universe. And one of the things that I suppose I've got a bit of a reputation of is being very down to earth and kind of practical and, shoot from the hip kind of philosophy. But, I love having a group of people and talking to them about the fact that, maybe we are all connected, and that's the difference between success in this life, in a way, and failure in the normal sense of the term. So could it be that the people who are successful, who attract other people so that they can assist them, are putting out a different energy because they're connected to people, spiritually, if you like, rather than trying to get from them as a kind of client, like a customer salesperson kind of thing. So I actually teach sales by going, look, imagine you were actually connected to everybody anyway. It's kind of a different way of looking at it. And that's what I love about the combination of the two.
I love what you guys have just described, and I'm in total agreement. I'm nodding the whole time. And in fact, I share all the time how I start my day, and I'll share it with you guys today. It's a prayer from A Course in Miracles, and it is, where would you have me go? Where would you have me? What would you have me do? What would you have me say, and to whom? And as you say, it kind of removes that sort of, although I'm very into setting intentions and all of that kind of thing as well, I love to start in that surrendered sort of energy in the morning and just see myself, as you say, as connected to this bigger whole, and be guided to the people that need me rather than that go-get. Yeah. So I love that you guys work in that combination too. I'm really interested to know and I know you both sort of have studied and really revere quite a few of the ancient sort of philosophies and practices. Are there any daily practices that you have that maybe stem from those that you'd like to share with our audience today?
Yeah, I mean, definitely when if you come to...
Sorry, I'm laughing. If you can see me laughing, it's because the daily practices don't just happen in the day. Living with Tony V is a 24-hour experience.
Yeah, I came across this teaching about, I don't know, a few years back anyway, and it was something that took me about 5 years. It was almost like a university course, but it was just in my own pace. It was just a woman I met. She's a very beautiful soul. She lives in California, and I got to know her really well. And I just, one day, I just remember not being able to sleep, and got up and in the middle of the night gone downstairs, and one of our teachers has been many of the teachers that we share their message, I always like to think we're continuing with their work really. There's a guy called Ivor James, which almost nobody's ever heard of, but he spoke what's known as the wisdom teachings. And his wisdom teachings came because he did all this in the 60s really. And when I found it, I sort of ordered it off his wife, and she put it all on tapes. So that you're probably too young to remember tapes, You remember that thing? And he put it in your cassette player, and then you just press the thing. Anyway, I just said, look, darling, just send me them all. This man's. I've just listened to one thing. It's called "Teach Me to Love." It's one of the most beautiful things you'll ever hear. Anyway, I just heard this, and I rung her up and said, look, can I get Ivor's work, And she said, yeah, what do you want? And I said, well, just send me everything. So she said, well, I put them on tapes, and she's quite an elderly lady. Anyway, there's 23 of them, and she sent them in a Rice Krispies box, which she sort of cut up, you know, and made in a little parcel. It was really beautiful. And anyway, we got the first one out, and I was like all excited, and I put it in the cassette player, and it started playing Christmas carols. I thought, okay, that's sort of interesting, you know. Anyway, I sort of like turned it over, and there was a different set of carols. Well, bless her, she'd put it in the cassette to make a copy over an old tape of Christmas carols and forgot to press record. Anyway, so that was our first experience of Ivor, and I thought, okay, so just let that go, you know. We got another one out of the box, and then there was Ivor. You know, it was just amazing. You know what he shares is later this year or maybe early next year, I'm going to put all his stuff. I've got it off the tapes and I've got it all on MP3s, and I've sold it to lots and lots of people, and they absolutely love it. But I'm going to get it into a course next year, so Ivor's work will go on forever. Anyway, the reason of this story is that he, as I was listening to him late at night, 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever, I just turned on one of my tapes and was listening, and he used a word I didn't really have understanding of, and he used the word super consciousness. And at the time, I just going, okay, sort of heard of unconscious, heard of conscious, what's super consciousness, you know? And so I typed it into Google, and that's how I met this lady in California. And she sent me all her work, yeah. And I literally studied this work for 5 years. In fact, to start with, I didn't really understand it. It was way, way, way out of my depth. I was reading. I have no clue what this woman's talking about, but I'm going to stick with it because it just feels right, you know. And I was guided here by Ivor, and it just feels like right, you know. And today I teach her stuff as well, you know. It's like I mastered this part of me. So one of the things that's at the heart of her teaching is that we are multidimensional. So when we go to sleep, we're actually not really asleep, in the sense that our life doesn't stop there. It in fact just carries on in a different vein. Now obviously people are a bit aware that they have dreams, but most people completely discount their dream time. So what I learned from her was that really, look, when we're like awake now, we call it awake, I'm not sure we all are, but at what some level we are, but we're sort of awake, so we call that conscious. But when we go to sleep, because our body's tired after whatever 16 hours, it needs, the body, physical body needs to rest, but of course our spirit is still completely awake. It doesn't need rest. So our body rests and our spirit is alive. So basically what happens is your body becomes unconscious, but you become conscious in another dimension. So when I first came across that concept, I thought, wow, maybe I'm just missing something here. So I need to get into what happens while I'm asleep, what's really going on. And so I sort of programmed myself, you could call it, to really connect with my sleep time. And it sort of led me to leave a 24/7 life, really, because I literally go to sleep and just wake up in another dimension. And but yeah, it is interesting because Nikki has to put up with that.
Yeah, there's a lot of variety in the bedroom. Let's put it that way, in more ways than one. But he talks a lot and he does seminars, and just a lot goes on, and sometimes he plays football, which is fun. But one of the things which is definitely, Tony is definitely conscious, if you like, because I can actually talk to him while he's in his fourth dimensional sleep time. So I actually say, no, if things get a bit too much, I sort of go, Tone, can you just, and he goes, actually, this is really important. I'm with President Obama, and you don't realise I have to talk to him. So it's like all goes on. But what's really fascinating is in the morning we often get up quite late. We're quite, privileged to be, not this week because we've got my grandson who's 17 months old, so we're getting up early. But we often get up quite late because when we wake up, we talk about that which what's gone on in the night. Yeah. But actually, when you were talking about daily rituals, what I was thinking about actually was that the fact that another person who I studied about 16 years ago, and then we found her again, which is a lady called Florence Scovel Shinn, who wrote a book called The Game of Life in 1925, would you believe? And what's fascinating about this book is that if you read it now, what she talks about the struggle, as she calls it, the first line of the book is, people think that, life is such a struggle when actually it's just a game. Yeah, and you have to know the rules of the game. So you know, when she talks about the struggles of life, they're exactly the same now as they were in 1925, you know, nearly 100 years ago, which fascinates me. One of the things that she talks about is doing affirmations. Now, obviously, lots of people teach affirmations, most famously people like Louise Hay and things like that. But hers are definitely, you know, much more to connect with the more expanded part of us. And so what Tony does is with clients is he helps them to create an affirmation that's very personal to them. And then they do it, you know, either reactively or proactively, whichever is there, whatever they feel is right for them. But Tony actually does it with them, because if you know, if you do really believe in that kind of energetic influence that we have on each other, you know, he actually will go in the bath and he will just spend, you know, hours doing his affirmations with all the people that he's working with. So, you know, that's part of our routine, because I use affirmations as well. I think also something that not many people talk about, which is contemplation time, which is really just to be still and to have quiet time. I mean, we really like to have quiet time with no, you know, we don't wear a watch, although Tony wears a watch, but it doesn't tell the time because somebody gave it him. It's a long story. And we don't read newspapers or watch television really. And if we do, we tend to try and look at it from a how can we assist that, rather than, you know, how can we just, you know, veg out and sort of, you know, watch the telly sort of thing. So I suppose our routines aren't perhaps as rigid, which is a funny word to use, but as they were when we first met, where we were literally, you know, 11 years ago, both of us were in that mode of doing an hour of power and then, you know, running and incanting, and, you know, we were extremely, you know, raw food, vegan, juicing, you know, those things, and all that we love, just that the truth is we don't do it perhaps as rigidly as we used to in the past. And, you know, so, and we do drink a drop of wine occasionally as well. Champagne is one of our favourite things. But so that's part of our rituals, to celebrate everything. That's one of the other things that we do.
I love that. But, yeah. It sounds as though what you've done is just gone with the flow of the pull of where you are in your life, because and I work with a lot of people in sort of lifestyle management as well. That's one of the areas that I touch on, as well as all different areas. And when it comes to particularly health and weight loss, and people will often, you know, hang on to something that worked for them 10 years ago, but last time I lost weight, I did it like this. I should be running, I should be this, I should be that. And that's probably one of the biggest catalysts for struggle and unhappiness, really.
Yeah, we call it, or it's got a name in personal development. It's got a name, that which is called shoulding.
Oh,
yeah. Shoulding, which is quite nice.
Well, it's true. It's very true. People do that, and a lot of it is that they feel like once they've committed to do something, that they must carry on doing it. And I think part of freedom is to be willing and be okay being with yourself and where you are and where you know how you want to live your life. For me, that's what freedom's all about.
I love that. A lot of people ask me, because I am, you know, in that sort of industry, what are you? They want a label from me. Are you vegetarian? Are you vegan? Are you this? Are you that? And my answer usually is, I'm just me in the moment. So if me in the moment wants to have a glass of champagne, me aligning with my inner being, my inner soul, what I desire, that is freedom for me. Having the freedom.
Absolutely.
So I love that you guys are having fun in life, and that is just
absolutely, that's it. Yeah.
I don't know what you I'm sure you've come across Dr. David Hawkins, who has also passed away. Many people passed away, I always love it what he says when he says that you know, he said, I have to drink coffee in order to, you know, lower my consciousness level so I can talk to ordinary people, which I always think is hysterical. And he apparently somebody came to his house once and said, you know, you haven't got any food. And he said, well, you know, I've got an apple and a piece of cheese in my fridge. And he went, and he went, I got plenty of food, you know, because he's like, I mean, he's a very amusing man, as you probably know from if you've heard him speak. He's very funny. But I think if you really look at some of the spiritual masters, some of the gurus, they've got incredible sense of humour, and they are really about freedom. I think the thing I find a little challenging, if I'm really honest, is sometimes if you come across someone in personal development or spiritual development who's very telling of, as like Tony said, this is the way you must, this is the only way to do it. And I tend to, as most people do, I'm kind of resistant of that, actually, because I kind of go, well, look, let me try something on. I'm really open to listening to, what you might suggest here. Let me try it on and see how that fits with me. And I suppose, yes, we like variety quite a lot, so we like to try things. But there are certain things, I think, that throughout the time, I've been in personal development now since '95, so coming up for like 20 years, and I think that certain things that I have never stopped doing. Right. And I suppose the number one thing, if people say to me, if there was one thing that you wanted to share with people over those years, that would be the conversations you have with yourself. And I think part of that is how much truth are you going to tell yourself about what you're responsible for, but also when you find something new and you love it and it helps you and if it doesn't feel right after a while. I remember I trained to do the New York Marathon. And I was, I had all these people kind of saying to me, "Oh, this is how you train, and this is what you do each day." And these were great, and I was listening, and I was reading books about it, and I was doing all those sorts of things, and I'd got a big chart, which I was running, I was counting down the weeks and everything. And then I went to America, and I was working on an event, and I suddenly woke up one morning and went, I'm loving this, but I'm actually not going to do the marathon. And people were going, "What? You're actually going to not do it now?" And I went, "Nah, don't think I will." And I was absolutely fine with it, but I love I like the freedom of being able to do that. I like choice. I think everybody does, really.
And I think that is what we're all seeking at heart, really. Whatever label you want to put on it, whatever disguise it comes under, whether it's in your professional life, in your your family life, relationships, financially, it is the freedom to choose in that moment, whether it's to be with your children at home, whether it's to choose to go and work a corporate job, whether it's to eat out in a restaurant on a Tuesday night rather than having to wait once a month on a special occasion, whatever it might be for you, sleeping in late, which I'm a big advocate for. Can I just ask you guys if you were to share, and you'll have to have one each here so you're not fighting. One last golden nugget of wisdom, something that you would say, if I was to say right now in this space, what is intuitively coming up for you that you need to share with our audience?
Lovely.
Nice, lovely way of putting it.
Lovely way. Well, my thing would definitely be a historic thing, which is our beliefs are so ingrained. And so I encourage people to look back in their family. So I always say, look, most people are brought up with their parents. Some aren't always that lucky, but most people are brought up by their parents, and they know their parents relatively well. And then you've got your grandparents. So most people, at some level know their grandparents. But then I say, well, look, who knows their great-grandparents? Who knows the names of their great-grandparents? Anything about them, where they lived, what they did? And then if you go back another generation, you're probably not even going to know your great-great-grandparents. So it's interesting to think that we as individuals have a very short span. Normally, in terms of our memory, it's quite short. But we take on beliefs very easily that go way back in time, that have been passed down. And, look, we all know the game Chinese whispers. So I believe that many of the beliefs that people hold today, if they could look at those beliefs with a new way, a new vigor that would open them up to new potential, new possibilities. And so, actually, I'm going to recommend a book. It's a very tough book to read. Very tough. In fact, it's a very expensive book. It costs £45, so that's quite tough for a lot of people, because most people, £45 for a book. I actually did the same, £45, but I didn't hesitate to buy it. Yeah, and it's about 600 pages long. And if you ask me who wrote it, I actually don't know, because he or he or she, I don't know who wrote it. It's written in a guise, but it's actually a channeling from the Akashic records. And the Akashic records, of course, if you've done any decent spiritual development, will have come into your sphere. And of course, it's argued that the Akashic records hold the history of everything, not just of mankind, but of each of our individual thoughts. I mean, absolutely everything is stored there. So, and channeling is not something I've really done myself. It's certainly I can be intuitive, and I can what I call switch on and connect. And I like to stay switched on and connected all the time if I can. I don't manage that all the time, but I love it to hear the wisdom of somebody who's got their connection quite switched on. Anyway, I was recommended this book and started to read it, and it gives one of the most difficult perceptions of humanity that I've ever read, because it almost says that almost everything that we believe, how would it be that's not true? And it then offers up from the Akashic records what's described as the truth, but obviously our truth is our truth. So it is what it is, and you take it as you see it, or experience it. But I have to say, it was something I'd encourage people to do, is to go massively beyond what you're comfortable believing, because in there somewhere is going to be something that's going to move you to have a new experience. And of course, you don't have to take any of that on as a belief in its own right. But what it does is it gives you a massive opportunity to expand, and more importantly, recognise how limiting your current set of beliefs are, because it just offers some so far akin to anything that you could ever imagine that could be written. That is actually saying is truth from the Akashic record. So the book's called The DNA, The Sands of Time, and I'd encourage you, because that for me was my latest way. I probably had that a couple of years ago now, but it was a way to even expand my perception or possibility as an individual father. It's like stretched me and made me grow almost, just by going, wow, I never really thought how I've got, even though I've spent all this time doing all this, I've still got quite a limited frame of reference, albeit some of it's my own experience, but some of it's come from others. But this really stretched me more than anything, so that would be my thing.
Thank you very much. So in simple terms, Tony, are you saying, and this is something that I actually implement and teach, to question everything, the way we do, perhaps the way we, and I'm going to share a little story really quickly because it's a funny one. I come from a very rigid kind of household where, the little pretty hand towels in the bathroom did not ever leave the bathroom other than to be washed, and the kitchen towels would stay in the kitchen, and vice versa. Think everything had its place, and it wasn't until recently that I was in my kitchen, and I sort of looked around, and there draped on the where the tea towels usually go was a pretty little hand bath towel, and I thought, wow, that would have never happened growing up, or even as when I ran my what I call Stepford wife house before my marriage ended, when things were really coming, were going in a way that wasn't really of me. It was just following suit, really. And I looked around and saw this pretty, hand towel that didn't really, AKA, belong in the kitchen. And I thought, yeah, I'm happy with that.
Perfect. Yeah, it's where it's meant to be now. That's what I love, no, that's fantastic. Well, it's again stretches you, doesn't it? And you don't realise how rigid we are, just based on how we were brought up. I mean, it's obviously in the coaching world, we're always going back into people's childhood and stuff like that. And we often say to people, one of the things we've always used is, who are you most like, your mum or your dad? And it's a great question, because people don't like to necessarily think of themselves like their parents. They like to distance themselves from their parents. But when you actually look at what you believe and what you do, it's so much based around your young years, and in spiritual terms, of course, when you, if you look at the chakra system and how that really works from a multi-dimensional view as well. So if you sort of mix in all the different medias, you'll see that people's sort of blockages, is a way to call it, or their stuckness, hangs out primarily in their childhood years. And so this is a fantastic thing to learn and understand. So rather than I saw this at Glastonbury so much, where people were all up at their, you know, brow chakra and their crown chakra doing all this stuff. But actually, when you chat to them for 10 minutes, you realise that their blockages are all in their lower chakras. Yeah. And so, for me, it's like, you need the energy to flow through you, and not to ignore the blocks which become part of your life, and also just part of your way of being, which you see as normal, and it's difficult to sort of unsee that, so to speak. So that's why I like to be stretched. I think the towels are fantastic. Get more of those. Get the bath ones in the kitchen.
Toilet paper in the kitchen and kitchen roll in the bathroom.
It, yeah. Try it out. See what it feels like. Yeah.
And my partner came home one day and said, "What? Why? What's going on?" I said, "Well, it just is."
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Nikki, what would you like to share?
Yes, I was just thinking that it's interesting that you say that, because when people ask us about what we believe and our philosophy and everything, but often we'll get people who just say, I really wish I could live my lives like you do, and the nice thing about it is they're not saying, oh, you've got a nice house or anything. They just go, it seems to be that you two don't get, you're not like restricted by what other people think and what other people do. And so I could give you loads of examples, but like sitting in the garden having lunch in our dressing gowns at 3 o'clock in the afternoon would be a good. And our garden actually looks out into other people's house, because we're in like a courtyard thing, so it's not as if we're in private. But also, often we'll be in a motorway services, and somebody will come in the ladies' loo and say to me, "Oh, are you going to a wedding?" Because I've got some dress on, which I would never think about keeping for best. And I go, no, I'm just going out, I'm just out for the day.
There was one time we went in the motorway services. When we were in Glastonbury, I bought Nikki what we called a witchy poo dress. It's a very glam dress.
It's like, it's got those kind of witches thick sleeves, and like mad. It's crazy.
Completely mad, but she looks sensational in it. And I have this bizarre suit. Somebody asked me to marry them once. I've done a few weddings. I'm not registered to do weddings, but people ask me, could you?
Spiritual weddings.
Both of us. They go, can you organise our wedding? We go, yeah. Well, what do you want? Anyway, we were in Cyprus, and Nikki saw this suit, which is a Paul and Joe, is it? Paul and Joe, some designer bloke, did it. But it looks like a convict suit or pyjamas at best, yeah. Anyway, I married this couple in it, and one day we got Nikki in her witchy poo suit, and me what looks like pyjamas, and we've gone into the motorway services and thought, okay.
People were looking at it, but we do tend to live our lives like that, and I think I really do believe that when people say, I wish I could have that life, it's only the restrictions they put on themselves. Absolutely. Because so often they're worrying about what other people think. And it's interesting what you're saying about your parents, because I look back and think, I had a fantastic upbringing, and real full of love and fun and joy and all those sorts of things. Not a negative upbringing, which some people have negative memories about it. But I still can see how I've my generation has definitely stopped having that kind of rigidity about it, and so, which brings me to sort of my answer to your question, really, which is if I had sort of something that's coming up that I think feels like the right thing to share, it would be like the old expression, know thyself. And I think that for somebody to really understand themselves, not what's expected of them, not what they think they should live their lives like so that they get safe, which is often one of the things. If they know themselves and know their true self, their real self, not the kind of what the programming's given them or whatever, and that their actual life journey is to find out more about themselves so that they can go, okay, this is really how I would love to live my life, and I'm not restricted by, believing that everything has to be in place for that to happen. I can have that right now. But also, really from perhaps a slightly tougher perspectiveness, it's like to be willing to ask yourself the question. So the way I put this really simply with clients of ours is I say, look, you know, here's the short, fast, quick and dirty way to have a better life, is to really accept that whenever something happens that you don't like, this is a massive gift from heaven and wherever else you think utopia is, to give you a message that if it's something you don't like, that there's a way that you have somehow drawn that towards you. And if you're willing to do that as a human being, I believe that you keep seeing the same things come towards you, so you keep getting the same message. So then you can go, okay, so that is a pattern of behavior, without beating yourself up, that I know that I do, that keeps getting me the same kind of experience. So that's what I need to work on. And so the simplicity of that means that you really know yourself, and you know when you're doing your old patterns, as it were. And that's something that I think is the key to life. I believe it's the gateway to freedom. I think it's the only way. You know, it's so sad that we have so many people, Maria, come to us in so much pain about their intimate relationship life. There's a saying that says, you know, the intimate relationship part of our life is the source of our greatest joy, but it's the source of our greatest pain. It's our deepest wound, all those sorts of things. I am certain that they are true. And that when people come with us with the stories and the, you know, the pain, and they always, you know, tell you the gory details. I mean, we have everything, you know, told to us. And when you introduce them to the concept that they could stop this happening, they could get the power back if they just be willing to look at themselves and work on that thing that they keep doing, because it's going to be a pattern. It's going to be a pattern that's going to happen over and over again if they don't understand it. And I think if anyone can get to that point where they really know themselves, and they know when they're doing their old pattern, and they don't beat themselves up, and they just let it go and do something different, I believe that's the key to life and freedom.
Yeah, I think that's where the choice thing really comes in, because obviously when you use the word choice, it can again have different meanings. Go on, you know, I can choose to do this today or this, but I think it's realising that you have these deeper choices when you recognise that you're just running your pattern. Because if you choose now not to run your pattern, that's quite different to choosing whether to have the day off or not. You know? But it's like a deeper meaning of the word. You know, I now choose. You know, I now choose not to do that pattern in this moment. And that is, I think Nikki's right, it's a beautiful thing to learn how to master.
And then we've seen so many people master that. And, you know, sometimes it takes time, but then they start to get into a relationship where they really are loving and giving to each other, and they have the bliss of that relationship. Then that makes our job, you know, like the best job in the world.
I can imagine. So conscious living, awareness, patience is a biggie, and then let the love roll. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, guys. It's been, I could sit here for tons more hours with you guys, but I know you have a gift for our audience. Could you share all about that, please? Oh, that's exciting.
Well, yeah, I sort of gift to you, I guess, is an opportunity to, you know, do more stuff with us. We have loads and loads of free stuff. We love free stuff. So, you know, whether it's if you're a budding coach and you want to help other people, then we have a coaching sort of blog which goes out every week, and you can just join that. And there's bundles of stuff on this. Nikki's got so much free stuff there that you keep you quiet for hours and days and months. We obviously do our relationship stuff. So if you're in a relationship, and we always say, look, if it's not at least an 8 out of 10 experience for you, then you need to put your hand up and say, can you help me, please? And that helps on our Tony and Nikki website. And then on top of that, Nikki does a lot of work with helping single girls that want to find a great relationship. And of course the modern way is very much gone down the dating website route, and you know, just a more modern approach through the technology, really. So Nikki's, you know, created a course called Let Him Find You, and what she teaches is how you need to get in a great place as a single girl so that a great man comes and sweeps you off your feet, we always say. So we have all of that. It's all free stuff. We love to give it away. You can shout at us and we'll just direct you in the right place.
Well, the link will be available as well next to today.
And then, you know, we do our Secret to Life event, and obviously we've got the Secret to Life website where there's some stuff on here, on there, for example, about multidimensionality. There's some great little videos on there which, you know, were supposed to be 10 minutes and ended up as an hour, you know. We did a webinar the other week, and I think that's somewhere there as well, which lasted for 7 hours. And we set
in 2 parts. We did it in 2 parts.
Yeah, we had to give up after 3 hours, going, hey, these people they expect to go home at 9 o'clock and they're still here. It's 11 now. So we had to do 2. But yeah, we put all that stuff online. So the Secret to Life website's got all that sort of stuff on it. And you know, then we do our events. You know, welcome to come to our events. We do them at really rock bottom prices, just so you can come and have a great couple of days with us, spend some time, hang out, learn stuff about you, meet other like-minded people, all that sort of stuff. So yeah.
Awesome.
All of the links to all of that so that people can click on.
Yeah, and one of the things that we have on all our websites is a box for people to ask questions, and they can literally they can put the question there and have a call with us if they want to, just so that we can assist them to find the right thing that we've got for them, so that can help them in whatever their situation is. So, you know, we're happy to communicate with them as well.
Fantastic. So much to choose from, guys. So go and grab your love and assistance and your freebies and have fun. And Tony and Nikki, I cannot thank you enough. It has been a pure pleasure. And I'm wishing you and everyone watching a bliss-filled rest of the day.
Well, we're really thankful for you asking us, and also, you know, want to wish you well. This is a great thing that you're doing, and getting the message out there, getting lots of different speakers on there. For me, that's the way, you know. It's find the person that turns you on the most and start, you know, learning from them. And it could be anybody, you just don't know. So well done you for, you know, biting the bullet and putting on such a great series of hangouts, as you now call it. So it's perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.